business leaders got to be master at time management. You've got to be absolutely clear on what matters the most and what matters the least and what doesn't matter at all.
Business of Architecture, episode 197. Hello, I'm Enoch Sears, and this is the podcast for architects, where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. I'd like to invite you to discover how to double your architecture firm income and create your dream practice of freedom and impact by downloading my free 4-part architecture firm profit map. As a podcast listener, you can get instant access by going to freearchitectgift.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of ArchiOffice. ArchiOffice is the only office and project management software designed specifically for architects. It helps you manage people and projects while you focus on designing great architecture. So whether you're working remotely or on-site, ArchiOffice allows you to monitor the status of your projects and tasks and send out invoices in an accurate and timely manner. Get your fully functional 15-day trial of ArchiOffice by going to businessofarchitecture.com/demo.
Greetings, my name's Ryan Willard and I'm here with the Business of Architecture, the UK edition, and I'm talking with business and high performance mentor Johan Taft.
Hello Ryan, hello listeners.
Absolute privilege to be here speaking with you. A little bit about Johan. He's worked with some incredible clients, from world-class athletes, top CEOs, to a number of architects and surveyors and other people in the construction industry, helping them win at their businesses. And Johan, he's been a mentor to me for the last few years, and he brings a unique background of military discipline, the business experience of being a head of operations for fast food and retail businesses in very intense markets, as well as the discipline of the martial arts and the kind of study of meditation to helping people really achieve way beyond whatever they could have thought possible. And I know, having been one of your clients and working with you, one of the things you always say to me is, Ryan, the priority is to keep the main thing the main thing. So what exactly does that mean?
Yes, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Yes, well, basically, Ryan, is I have worked with so many people, and one thing most of them all have in common when they come to me is they don't have absolute clarity on what the main thing is.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, which we can go into as we go along here. So the first thing to do is to absolutely understand what the main thing is. Now, Albert Einstein quoted that you can't fix a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
So most clients who come to me to fix problems, big problems, small problems. And so they have a particular view of that problem, which I say is a fixed view. It's coming from their training, their background. It's coming from their childhood even. They have a particular view of themselves and the world. So we all see events, we all see life through a particular set of filters. Now, some of those filters are very useful. Some of those filters are less useful. But what doesn't work, and is a priority for me working with the clients to make work, is the fixedness of those filters. We see things almost always from one fixed point of view. And that point of view will rarely change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what an architect, for instance, who comes to me and is looking to set up his own business or has set up his own business like you had, sees that business and his role in that business from a very biased perspective.
Yeah.
Some of it is very good. Some of it has its limitations. So by the time we have spent a few months working on that person's mindset, hopefully by then they will have elevated themselves from the fixed way of thinking about them, their role, their business, and even the future of their business, unlocking that fixed position and start to see things from a fresh new perspective. I call that a perspective of possibility.
Yeah.
Most of us are spending a lot of time and energy reacting and responding to the events and the circumstances in front of us. And we need to do a little bit of that. That's what I call working in our business, and very much in a crisis mode in our business. We need to be working as much, if not more, on our business.
Yes. Yeah, actually taking the time to design the business, where we're going, what the vision is for our business.
Yes.
And who we want to become, what our purpose for running a business is.
Absolutely. And a question I ask many leaders is this: what do you think you're paid to do? Leaders are paid typically between 10 and 100 or maybe 300 times more than the girl or the guy on the floor. So what are they paid to do to get all that money? And I hear all sorts of different things. I'm paid to get a return on investment. I'm paid to satisfy the shareholders. I'm paid to lead the whole thing. I'm paid to come up with ideas. I'm paid to make sure everything works correctly. I'm paid to hire the right people, whatever. Very rarely does someone tell me I'm paid to think. And as a leader or a business owner, we got to remember that we are paid to think.
Yeah.
And the quality of your thinking will determine the quality of the outcomes.
Yes.
It's an immediate correlation.
Yeah. And so do you think many of us architects, when we come into running a business, what are the sort of traps or the fixed points, the fixed way of viewing things that we tend to be stuck with?
Well, your greatest strength, in a way, is your greatest weakness too, because architects are what I call engineers. Most of them have an engineer mind.
Yeah.
So very, very detailed, very precise, very exact mind, and a very paced mind, which is what architecture to a large degree is about. However, that mind will not be useful in all aspects of business. It will be useful in producing drawings and producing plans and being compliant to perhaps state or national criteria, national
building codes,
etc. Absolutely. However, that way of thinking, that way of being, is probably not the best way of being for developing a business.
Yeah.
So if a salesman, the sales branch or the marketing branch of an organization were behaving in the same manner, they might not get the results they wanted to.
Yeah.
So different horses for different courses, and typically an architect is going to be one of two different types of horses. He's either going to be the ones I've met, certainly, I can put them in two camps. They'll either be the very detailed mind that I've just described, or they will be the creative architect. The architect who is an architect because he's passionate about design, passionate about creation and creativity, and wants to make the world a more beautiful place through buildings or through houses and homes. So, and this type of person is a big picture thinker.
Yeah.
He's a dreamer. He's a big picture thinker. He's a disruptor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A visionary.
A visionary, absolutely. And that's almost on the diametrically opposite way of being to the very detailed, compliant, precise engineer mind. And these people can be sitting in the same office at the same desk almost.
Yeah.
But they think in very different ways. So when either one of those architects then decides to set up their own gig, their own business, they're going to come to that business with those prejudices. And that will help them in some respects, but it will limit them in many other respects.
Got it.
So my job is to help them detach from that fixed position, keep it when they need it, right? And eventually they will probably dish a lot of that out to other people.
Yeah.
And have a much more helicopter view, an elevated view of the business, and start to learn the different ways of being that the business leader needs to embrace.
And what are those? And what would you say the priorities are in learning to be a business leader? First
of all, time management.
Yeah,
business leaders got to be master at time management and decision making.
And I was going to say, I mean, architects, we come from the university background, and we've learnt the very bad habits of working very long hours, very late nights, and kind of time management could be all over the shop. So
absolutely, and with time management, really, it's time prioritization or task prioritization. You've got to be absolutely clear on what matters the most and what matters the least and what doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
So it's putting the horse before the cart. So for a business leader, there are certain things that must absolutely matter, that need to be handled on a regular basis, without which the business would not survive. And some of those might be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They might be very counterintuitive for some of those stuck prejudices that I was talking about.
What might be some examples of those?
Well, for instance, typically let's look at the first type that I was talking about, the engineer mind. this person is probably used to working in a back office somewhere,
Yeah.
on their own,
Yeah.
with a bunch of other experts,
Yeah.
with very little disruption, very little interruption, and they're given a brief and they're given the time to do it, or hopefully they're given the time to do it, or they're working under time pressures sometimes as well, and then they'll just produce the document or the work. And so for them, going out into the wide world and meeting prospects and selling, because make no mistake, the architect who sets up his own gig needs to start learning to wear and wearing the sales hat,
Yes.
as well as the strategist hat, as
Yeah.
well as the marketing hat, as well as the manager hat. All these different hats, they need to be learned.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I haven't been to architecture school. As you know, my background is in the Navy and in retail. But I don't think architecture schools teach all those disciplines, do they?
No, not at all.
They don't.
And likewise, when I sort of started working with you,
Yes.
the prospect of becoming a salesperson, I had my own internal stories about, no, I'm an architect, I'm a trained professional, I can't be a salesperson. There's almost like a kind of resistance to it. And
That's right.
actually it is the main thing, is to be a salesperson. And actually
Absolutely.
redefining what it is to be a salesperson can become a very freeing experience, and actually you can really learn to love the act of communicating with other people and negotiating and structuring deals.
You're quite right, Ryan. I mean, all these roles and all these careers and positions come charged with a pre-impressed view of what they are. So most people would dread being a salesperson because it comes so charged with negativity. I mean, and we were taught at a very young age not to trust the salesman, not to answer the door, and so on and so forth. And we're also, with sales people, have learned us to be tricky. And so there's a whole relationship between buyers and sellers which is uncomfortable typically. If we don't reinvent that and reinvent ourselves in that, we're going to be caught in it. In the same way with staff and employees. If you don't reinvent the role of manager at a more powerful level than the default one which is out there, it's not going to be comfortable. Exactly the same thing with landlords and tenants. Most tenants dread landlords and most landlords dread tenants. Yet they might be locked in the relationship for 20 years. So the key is to reinvent that. In order to reinvent those roles, we need to reinvent who we are. We need to unlock ourselves from these fixed views of ourselves and of the world. And start focusing on not on what is right. In other words, we're right about a fixed view. We're right that architects, blah, 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 blah. The list is long. And all the things you might not like about being an architect, all the things you might like about being an architect. But this is a fixed view of what an architect is. We need to unlock ourselves from those fixed views and get really passionate and focus on what works. And that will be different in every situation. So I teach situational leadership to people, providing the right tools, the right management skills, the right communication skills, the right people, the right everything for the situation. And every situation is different. So it's really like being a bespoke architect or a bespoke business leader. Being a bespoke architect, bespoke architects listen very carefully to what their customers want, and they'll look to provide that, usually at a premium. Bespoke comes at a premium. And I invite business leaders to look at their business from a bespoke point of view as well. It needs something very specific for them. And that's a mixture of your aspirations, your visions, your goals, the nature of the business you're in, the marketplace, the pricing policy, the marketing strategies you have. It's a very, very big mix. And then you bring in the very, very unstable, untangible element of people and people's emotions.
Fascinating.
It's a massive cocktail.
And for architects, I know when we've worked together, the sort of obstacles that I've come up against was, this being a salesperson. And, when we first started working together, for example, I was often giving away too much in a negotiation or in a deal, and that is quite, on the surface of it, it seems like, I said the wrong thing, but it's not. There's actually a lot more inner obstacles that you have to kind of confront and get honest with, about the self-limiting beliefs, your value, what you're providing. How do you help people uncover those, and how important is that?
Well, they've got to understand that there's two aspects to all of this, and you touched on it yourself just there, Ryan. The first aspect is the internal aspect. We've got to get a compass back to true north. In other words, we have to have an awareness and an understanding of what we're getting into. And for the most, we don't. We go into stuff without fully realizing what we're going into. I received a testimonial from a client yesterday who's a ballerina. And one of the things she said is that through working with me, she became aware that most of the problems she had were actually not problems. They were symptoms. And what we did is we then looked at what the root causes of those symptoms were.
Yeah.
Went right back to the seed and then looked at all the different things that needed to be put in place to resolve it before going in a new direction.
Yeah.
So what typically people will do is they will go in a new direction by putting good onto bad, new onto old, and the old wins because it's much bigger than the new.
Yeah.
So in the same way, going into a negotiation situation or a sales situation, we really need to come from fresh. That means that we need to get complete with all those prejudices, all that head trash, if you will.
Yeah.
All those unfulfilled expectations that we've had in the past, all those defeats that we've had in the past. We need to come to terms with them all and get present, get truly present, and forgive it all, if you like. It's a healing process in a way.
Yes.
I mean, and forgive all that, get present, and rewrite it. And rewrite a relationship to our business and a relationship to our clients and a relationship to prospects. Most people are intimidated by prospecting. But at the end of the day, they're fellow human beings like you and I who have a need for products and services.
Yeah.
Why should we put ourselves above or below those people? So a very important thing that I like to embed in people that work with me is that we all put our trousers on one leg at a time. Most of us anyway. And so do our prospects. They're people like us. So walking into a prospect meeting, it's vital to not get caught up in all the old biases that we have about sales or selling, the fears and so on and so forth. Get complete with all that. That has to happen before.
Yeah.
And start creating some parity. And from that parity will come trust and collaboration. Because at the end of the day, you want the client to buy your services and the client wants a fix to their problem. And if there's a fit, there's a match, then there's a marriage.
Yeah.
If there's not, then there shouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when
that's a very different mindset than most of us would initially go into a sales meeting where we're trying to close the deal.
Yes.
And trying to get the money.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But actually, no, we're here. We're building a relationship.
Yeah. Make no mistake. The ultimate goal is to go to the bank.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. To get the money. However, the goal of the meeting.
Yeah.
Is to see if there's a fit. And if there is a fit, chances you'll go to the bank. If there's not a fit, you won't go to the bank, not with them. Then you go and find someone else.
Yeah.
That's why you need a pipeline of more than one prospect.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So coming back to the role of the architect turned business owner, if the business owner doesn't understand that he has two main hats, certainly as a sole trader or a small business, one is fulfilling the customer order, so doing the architecture work, but the other is getting the customers.
Yeah.
So I'm in a very similar position. I have a certain expertise. I sell thin air, right?
Yeah.
But I have two hats that I've learned to wear quite well, I think. One is the mentoring hat, but the other one is the sales hat.
Yeah.
And I'm two different people in both those situations. I don't confuse the two.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a line between the two. And if you are the sales department of your organization, because there's just you or just you and a couple of colleagues, then you need to be able to wear those hats and live in what I call day-tight compartments. The skills needed to sell are very different to the skills that you will then utilize once you have the client. You'll speak differently to the client once you have the client. You should.
Yeah. And what would be the sort of ABC of skills that you need to make a sale?
Well, you need a system first of all. So there are some good systems out there that you can learn. So go and learn a good system.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, the first one is your internal compass. It needs to be strong. You need to understand that your job is to be powerful in that sale. Whether you get the order or not, that's another matter. But at least be powerful in the sale. Second thing is that everybody buys based on emotion, not on logic. Yet most salespeople give a very slick presentation, a PowerPoint presentation or other, and I suspect that architects would probably be the same. An architect would typically be telling a prospect of how good they are and how different they are and how many years they've studied and all this.
Exactly. We have the nice portfolio, and we
Exactly.
kind of, please have a look through all this. And
I think that might be important later on, perhaps to confirm the sale. But certainly in the beginning, a prospect wouldn't be interested in that. They don't really care which college or university you went to. They don't care how many degrees you got. They don't care how many other projects you've done for who. They don't really care about that at that stage. What they care about is them and their problem. And so if you can put on your listening, ears, open up your ears and listen and talk less, but listen and ask good questions to find out what's really going on for them and why they want what they want, then you probably will start building trust. People don't buy from people they don't trust. You'll build a good sense of bond and communication. They'll feel related to you. People typically buy from people they like and they trust and they respect. You'll build that respect. And once the bridge of, I call it the bridge of trust, essentially, is built, then and only then can perhaps services and products be discussed and move over that bridge. But if the bridge isn't in place, it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
Yet, the first thing people do is look to move the service or the product without the bridge of trust. So the trust comes from finding out what's really going on for them.
Yeah.
They trust in you. You become a confidant,
if
you like. And that is, I think, the first powerful position to establish, is being their confidant. So you're not a seller, you're not lower than them, you're not higher than them, you're a confidant.
Yeah. No, I certainly found the training that you've given me going into sales situations, they've become hugely enjoyable.
Yes.
And very fulfilling conversations, because I get to know somebody very deeply, because rather than being armed with a portfolio and prices and all that kind of stuff, which is good, but actually being armed with a set of questions and being confident enough to ask a ballsy question or direct question and go deep into the sort of emotional needs and wants, and also to be, just listening, genuinely listening to the other person, to allow them to open up and go very emotional with what it is that they're talking, because it's somebody's house essentially, and it's more than just light and shade. It's about family, it's about relationships, and to have the confidence to ask questions about what's not working there and what's the impact of them living in a space which is not, which is not ideal for them, and for them to share that. That's such a powerful interaction to have, that it's very fulfilling and enjoyable, and also I can be quite confident that, this job's going to go my way. I don't even need to show them anything because I've listened.
That's right. Yes, I mean, you've probably heard this many times before, and it gets repeated a lot, but people don't care how much they know until they know how much you care. Right? So it's about them. We've got to make it about them, not about us. In the same way, I make it all about them with my clients. I want to find out exactly what's causing them discontent, deep discontent.
Yeah.
And what the impact of that is on their life, on their business, on their finances. It's more than just money. I mean, architecture is more than just bricks and cement and wood, is it not?
Yeah.
It's about people's feelings, ultimately. People spend big money on architecture because they want to feel good about it for whatever reason. Some of them are internally driven. Some of them are externally driven. They want their house to look better than the Joneses' house. It's still all emotion.
Yeah.
Or they've always had the dream to live in a house by a forest with a swimming pool in the front yard. It's going to be emotionally driven. Yet we only just talk about the cost of bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
So we want to, I think 80% of the conversation has to be about all that intangible stuff.
Yeah.
And 20%, of course, we need to talk about the tangible stuff too. But next, not first. Yeah.
And with your experience of working with architects and designers, what are a lot of the pains that architects come to you with? What kind of states what's the kind of common problem, or is there one?
Yes, well, one of them is that they're too busy.
Yeah.
They never have time for anything, so they're too busy, and they're bogged down in paperwork.
Yeah.
That's one of them. So that's a very big problem, because if they're bogged down in paperwork, they can't go and expand the business. They're working too much in the business and insufficiently on the business. And that comes back to they're paid to think. If they've graduated, or graduated probably the wrong word, but if they've mutated from being purely an architect to the owner of an architecture practice, their role has dramatically transformed and changed. They cannot be perpetuating their old role.
Yeah.
The business will never take off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even if they do have other people running the business side, they're the owner. They need to have an awareness far greater than just the architecture side of the business. So that's the first thing. The second, I think, big frustration that I get from architects, certainly the architects who are more on the technical side, or the engineer mind side that I mentioned earlier on, is assertiveness. Now they are business leaders. They're going to have to negotiate everything from the cost of electricity for their offices to contracts to working with subcontractors. They need to toughen up. So I created a program which I call From Labrador to Tiger, and it teaches those people to embrace, of course, the Labrador side, which is all the things I mentioned earlier on, but being able to comfortably step into being a tiger for as long as needed to get those tasks handled powerfully.
Yeah.
To protect the thriving of the business, essentially. Yeah. So it's not easy to do, because again we are stuck in these prejudices. So we it's a little bit like, initially when I work with clients, it's like a post driven into the ground, been there for a very long time. We're going to have to pour a lot of water on to loosen up the soil.
Yeah.
And then we're going to need to yank it left, right, backwards, forwards, and turn it around to loosen all that soil up. And then eventually we can lift it out of that fixed position, and we can put it in whatever position we need. And I call that, if you like, situational positioning of a leader. He needs to be able to position himself according to the situation and not according to his university degree.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's contextual.
Very, very contextual.
Yeah.
And there's a whole wide range of skills that need to be learned, that can be learned. Everything can be learned, but the mind needs to be in a fast, accelerated learning process, especially for an architect who might have been in a firm for 10 or 20 or 30 years and then sets up on their own. It's a very, very different role.
Yeah.
So they need all the help they can get.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think my final question for you is, because you've
Yes.
used the word leader a
Yes.
lot, and I really believe that architects, you are a leader. That's what you're trained to do. But yet we're never actually explicitly told about leadership or what it is. It's just kind of, you kind of hope that somebody has it, or those qualities of a leader emerge.
Yes.
For you, how would you define leadership?
Okay, well, there's first of all, leadership, there's two words there, leadership and management. People get them confused.
Yes.
Management is taking care of tasks, essentially managing tasks, managing people, managing processes, so taking care of stuff. Leadership is the fulfillment of a vision, is touch, moving, inspiring people to fulfill a vision. There's many definitions of leadership. That's the one I'll use here. And I see leadership broken into two parts. Again, the internal self-leadership.
Yes.
We need to be powerful in our own right. Powerful people who feel good about themselves produce good results. So a leader needs to be leading by example. Needs to be a powerful self-leader. Needs to be able to be in charge of his or her emotions. In other words, they need to be in control of their mind. Many of us are continually reacting and responding to events rather than being the cause of those events or the creator of those events. A leader needs to be the creator of events, not always chasing and reacting and responding to events. So that's a big shift for many people.
Yeah.
Once we're powerful as a self-leader, then the opportunity to become a leader of others opens up. But only really there at that point. If we're not a powerful self-leader, it becomes very difficult to lead others.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Johan. And if people are looking to work with you or find out a little bit more about what it is you do, how would you suggest they do that?
They can contact me through my blog site, magnifyyourgreatness.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for talking, and I look forward to many more conversations.
Thank you, Ryan.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for listening today. If you're looking for more time, freedom, impact, and income as an architect, get instant access to my free 4-part architect profit map by visiting freearchitectgift.com. Today's podcast is sponsored by AIA Advantage partner BQE Software, the makers of ArchiOffice. ArchiOffice is the only office and project management software designed specifically for architects. It helps you manage people and projects while you focus on designing great architecture. So whether you're working remotely or on-site, ArchiOffice allows you to monitor the status of your projects and tasks and send out invoices in an accurate and timely manner. Get your fully functional 15-day trial of ArchiOffice by going to businessofarchitecture.com/demo. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world.